What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Real Talk. And I'm here with Chris Lambert, the host of Watching the Throne podcast. If you're a Kanye fan, if you're a Browns fan, if you like anything to do with music, check out my boy Chris Lambert. He drops some fire, and it's almost like every day I see you posting videos. What's good, man?
Yo, Kenny, thanks for having me on. It's
Man,
nice to be talking, especially like finally after we've been trying to set this up for a little bit.
yeah, I mean, we've been working on this for a while. I mean, initially I wanted to bring you on. Obviously, I'm a huge Kanye fan. You are as well. But wanted to bring you on to talk about Genius, talk about Donda, talk about everything that's been going on. So much has happened since then. And now we can talk a little bit about football as well. But first and foremost, how did you what brought you to Kanye? What turned you on to that?
For just like being a Kanye fan or the podcast?
Well, first being a fan and then in the podcast.
Yeah. So I was in college, like College Dropout came out my junior year of high school, heading into, or no, my senior year of high school. And it was just kind of all over. I was hearing the radio songs. We got to college, and when Stronger came out in 2007, it was just a song that kicked off every like Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights basement party that we were having.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 808s and Heartbreak that I legitimately became a fan. We usually have these like tiers that we talk about in terms of a Kanye fandom, where it's like tier 0, you don't like him or the music. Tier 1, you like the music, but you're not really sure about Kanye the person. And then tier 2, you're like, I like the music and I think I kind of like the person. And then you get to like tier 3, where you're just like all in on everything
Yeah.
Kanye. And for a while I was like tier 1. I was like, I like the music, but he's a little too arrogant. And then 808s and Heartbreak came out, and my dad had passed away in 2007. And I was still kind of reeling with a lot of those emotions, especially being in Cleveland for college and in the winter, and it was cold, and I was really kind of depressed and angry.
Your dog's depressed and angry too.
Yeah, somebody dropped off a package.
Hey, that's your guard dog right there.
Right? He's just doing all the work, standing on his hind legs. And when 808s came out, it was the first album that I really felt like I didn't just like it for the sound. I liked it because I felt a connection to it in a way that I didn't know of any other album that talked about the grief of losing a parent, losing these relationships, feeling like you're just in this zone of sadness. Which I knew there were breakup albums, but there was just something next level about that. So that's really when I became a Kanye fan. And then when My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy came out, it was kind of game over. I was just riding around, and it was like Ohio winter, right? November. And I'm just windows down at 22 degrees outside, but having to have like Blame Game blaring out the car while I drive. So that was really the start of being a fan. And then with the podcast, my co-host, Travis Bean, he and I have a movie analysis site called Film Colossus, where we explain movie endings and themes in kind of like bigger detail than other people. We style ourselves as narrative experts. And we were doing all of that when Yeezus came out. And we were just sitting there like, Yeezus uses a lot of the techniques that we talk about when we deconstruct these films, but nobody's talking about it. Like all these reviews will mention kind of the artistry, but nobody's talking about the narrative. Nobody's talking about the themes, or how On Sites, like the interlude in On Site, foreshadows the music in Payoff and Bound 2. Like none of that was being discussed. So we decided, let's do a podcast where we kind of go through Ye's discography, build up to Yeezus, because at the time it was 2015. And we'll just kind of illustrate some of the narrative aspects of Ye. And then more albums kept coming out. So what was supposed to be this project that took the course of 6 albums or whatever it was, ended up then growing out with each album he was releasing.
Yeah, and it's really cool to like look at the breakdown of everything, right? Because each album is so completely different. And I think that I've seen something where I don't remember who said it, but I saw a tweet that basically said after 808s, or 808s was the start of it, like it's Kanye going through the stages of grief. where you have the sadness, the anger, the the bargaining, and then the realization where you get to Donda. And so, kind of looking at the breakdown of that and where it goes, it's pretty exciting. Me myself, I actually became a fan. My first song that I heard, the first video I saw Through the Wire. And so, I'm sitting there, and because I was just, so 2004, I was in college. I had just blown out my knee. I'm like going through this massive depression, right? Like, I'm like, my football career is over. I'm done playing ball. Like, one night I was sitting on the roof of my frat house, like ready to just go. And I'm like, my boy comes in, we sit down, go into the room, and Through the Wire comes on the TV. And I'm like, yo, like, if this dude can freaking rap through his freaking jaw wired shut, like, why am I tripping off my knee? Like, and then that just kind of like just started everything for me. And so, I resonate with you with, losing a parent. I lost my mom last year. And, that's where Donda kind of hit me, where I'm like, okay, like, this is cathartic for me right here. But, going through your pod, you're going through the discography. You've also you've had the opportunity of, being able to see Jeen-yuhs firsthand and be there for Jeen-yuhs and actually meet the guy. So what was that like? Because I saw him at Disneyland, but I was like 10 feet away by like 50 security guards, and I got closer to Chris than I got to him. So
yeah, well, and we'll have to talk about knee injuries at some point, because I was playing baseball in college and ACLs got to me. But it was cool because I got to talk to Cudi and Chike in an interview ahead of time. I was part of like a Netflix press junket, and I got to see the full documentary early because of that, and that was exciting. And then I was going to go out to Los Angeles just to visit family and friends and just spend a couple days there. And it happened to be my birthday, and I was just excited to spend some time in LA. And when I was talking to one of the producers for the documentary, who I had talked to for a Forbes piece that I had written when I was briefly a contributor to Forbes, he's like, you're going to be out in Los Angeles. We're doing some events for Jeen-yuhs. I'll invite you out there. I'm like, cool. So he invites me to this thing that was just the Jeen-yuhs experience. And he had initially styled it as something that was supposed to be a little almost like a art exhibit or museum experience, and told me he was getting me tickets for Saturday. I was like, oh, I won't be able to do that. We have some family stuff. And he's like, all right, come tonight to this other thing. So I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. It seems to be some kind of party. I had no idea that it was the premiere event out in Los Angeles. I just thought it was going to be maybe some kind of party that they were doing for Cudi and Chike and everything. And so I get there, and I think it was starting like 9:30 kind of thing. And I have to do a COVID test across the street. And we're talking downtown Hollywood, where there's all these fancy restaurants, traffic's insane. I missed a turn, and it took me 7 minutes to go around the block. Just to like get through all the traffic. I guess Justin Bieber was doing a show that night as well. That was right across the street. So I finally park. I'm waiting for this COVID test to come back, and I check Twitter, and I'm seeing people post that Ye's at the premiere and at the after party. Wow. And I'm looking across the street, and I just see this banner that I'm seeing in some of these photos, and I'm just like, oh, so he's there, like, and I'm gonna be here. What is this? Like, what am I going into at this at this moment? So I get cleared of COVID, which was nice, and walk across the street, walk inside, and it's this really nice Italian restaurant. And there may be like 50 people inside at that point, and it was big and closed down, of course, for the events. There's this huge bar, like the first wall when you walk in was just this huge, gigantic bar, and you have a little low wall that has booths on each side of it, and then a gap for servers to walk or people to walk, then another wall that has booths on each side of it. So you have two of those setups, and then the VIP section. And I'm seeing some people I recognize, like Theophilus London's walking around. Jason. Oh, why am I blanking on his name? Hollywood Unlocked. Jason Lee.
Yeah, Jason
He's
Lee.
walking around. So I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm seeing some people that like I recognize, but nobody else. So I'm doing some laps by myself. I'm getting told not to go into the VIP area. They just look me up and down. They're like, you're not supposed to be here. And I'm standing at the bar waiting to get a drink, and Quavo just stands next to me to get this drink, and he's just all iced out, which was kind of wild because I'm just like kind of looking down this awesome suit on, awesome jewelry. And I'm like, all right, so there's some people here that have some star power, but I still didn't see Ye. And I see Jason Lee at the bar. I was like, oh, I'm going to talk to him and just tell him, you know, I've been following. Congratulations on the connection. So he's holding court with a few other people. And I'm just kind of standing there with my drink, trying not to be too awkward. And I see out of the corner of my eye, all these people flood this left side entrance where everybody else, all of us normal people, are coming in on this other entrance. And it's Ye. He walks in and he's wearing the outfit that we all recognize at this point, like the black jacket, black shirt or black sweater, black shirt, black pants, the boots. And he's getting swarmed. I was like, wow, Ye's 10 feet away from me, 15 feet away from me, but it felt like a mile just because of all the people swarming him. And I'm excited to meet him and talk with him one day, but I'm also not the kind of person that's like, I'm going to fight through everybody and introduce myself. I want to have like a little bit of like class and grace when I do it.
Yeah.
And but I'm kind of like looking. I'm just like, oh, maybe there'll be an opportunity at some point, but I bet he's gonna go back into the VIP area and I'm not gonna get to see him. So I'm still kind of biding my time and waiting for Jason Lee to open up. And that's when I turn and look, and Ye's just walking right towards me. And he walks past, and I tried to say something when he was walking past, like, hey, Ye, but nothing really came out. I was like, say it, and then just kind of stood there. And he walks right up to Jason Lee, and he and Jason Lee start talking, and they step away from the bar for a second, and they're legitimately right next to me. It's like they were including me in the conversation. So I'm just standing where I could push both of them. That's how close I was to them as they're kind of like leaning down and talking to each other. And I'm feeling a little awkward in the sense of it looks like I'm directly engaged with them, but clearly neither of them know who I am. So I'm trying not to be too invasive to what they're talking about, but still be like, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to talk. Yeah. And after a couple minutes, Jason Lee turns away and Ye's just standing there by himself. I was like, this is my time. Guy's just standing there. I can introduce myself. And as I get ready to say something, 3 people fly up and one gets ahead and is just like, yay, I want you to meet Melissa, and pulls this girl to him, and she like shakes his hand and he kind of smiles at her. And then he introduces another girl to him, and then somebody else brings him a drink and he's making jokes about the drink. He's now a foot away from me, legitimately a foot away from me, within like shaking distance. And I'm not going to be able to say anything to him because all these other people are saying more. And my heart's sinking just a little bit. And then everybody leaves again. And he's just standing there, not doing anything. Nobody's talking to him. And I'm like, okay, well, here we go. And it's kind of like a movie where I like look left, look right. All right. Hey, Ye, do you mind if I introduce myself? And he doesn't make eye contact with me. I'm like to his right side. He has a side turn to me. And he goes, go ahead. And I go, Chris Lambert with the Kanye podcast. And he gives like a turn with a little bit of like a lip purse, like, and goes, oh yeah. And gives me a handshake, hug. And he's just like, great, and smiles. I'm just like, okay, that's like legitimate. It was a legitimate reaction. And I'd be honest if I was like, oh, he was just being nice. He clearly had no idea what I was talking about, but it was a legitimate recognition. And then we just kind of stood there for a second. I was like, I really liked your Black Future Month speech. He's like, oh, you heard that? And he kind of smiles. He goes, the thing about speeches is sometimes I don't know I'm going to be given speeches. And I was like, wait, are you saying that was all off the cuff? He's like, yeah. I was like, you were rhyming in the middle of that. Like, you just were dropping bars in the middle of that. And he kind of smiled. He's like, yeah. And that was essentially the conversation. And I asked if I could get a picture, and he said, okay. And there was nobody close enough where I could just be like, take this. So I'm trying to do it myself, and I'm trying to get the angle right. And it's looking like the final product looks absurd because I'm like trying to smile with my chin tucked back, but Ye looks good. So it was a good experience, but I should have asked him right then and there, like about the movie interview. Like, do you want to do an interview about movies? But then I posted it to Instagram the next week, and he told us to come to Miami, and then never heard from him again. So it was a whirlwind of a February for Kanye experiences.
That's obviously it's easily a top 10 experience, top 5 experience maybe. It's an incredible story, you know. I think that the thing is, you get a smile out of Ye. Like, that's a genuine smile out of Ye. Like, not many people get that. So, you know, and then, you know, at the premiere, you're there, you're checking it, you know, you're seeing everybody, you're meeting everybody, you meet Ye. This documentary, I mean, what Cudi and Chike put out there was just phenomenal. And, you know, it made me want more as a fan. It made me want more as not just a fan of the music, but as a fan of Kanye and as somebody who's followed his career, has followed his life, you know, and just watching the different acts and the transformation and kind of, you know, the rise and the not the fall, but, you know, kind of the rise and the public perception of and change of him. What is something that you would say to people that aren't Kanye fans that don't listen to Kanye, that say, well, I can't stand Kanye because he's too arrogant or he's crazy? Because I get it a lot, and I have my personal opinion, but I'd love to hear yours.
I would just say that it's okay to feel that way. Like, you don't have to like everyone. Somebody could be a saint, right? And you could still be like, you know, something about that person, I just don't connect with it. But I think with Ye, the thing I would caution people is, do you really know about him, or do you just know the headlines?
Right.
And I think the more that people start to look into the details of him, whether it's the actual quotes or the context around headlines or just listen to interviews with him, the more you get to know him as a person rather than just a headline, the more people tend to at least become neutral or sympathetic or start to like him in a way that you may not if you're just hearing the headlines or reading the headlines or getting a snippet out of context. So typically that's the thing that I ask, or at least say, you know, like, watch an interview or two and let me know if you still feel the same way about him, or if he surprises you in a way. Or I often mention how people that know him or have met him talk about how thoughtful he can be, how much he asks questions, how like often kind he is to the people that want to talk with him. So I just kind of try to put out there that the reality of Kanye might not be the same thing as the media perception of Kanye.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And it's very similar to how I approach it as well. There's the star right there. But so, you know, kind of transitioning from Ye and kind of getting into, you know, your background and being from Cleveland. And this is a great transition here. I'm excited about it. I was at the Sacramento show for Pablo, where he went on his rant and everybody went crazy out there, right? But what stood out to me more than the rant and everything like that was when Cudi came out.
Oh yeah.
And Cudi comes out on the stage. They have, you know, obviously this famous beef that, you know, Ye comes out and says, I birthed you. And, you know, they go back and forth and they squash the beef. And it brought out Kids See Ghosts, right? Like it ushered in a new era of Ye and Cudi. And they've always made amazing music together. And then now we have this new beef where, you know, Cudi's friends with Skeet. Ye doesn't want Cudi to be friends with Ski. He's trying to dictate that. Yet Cudi calls him a dinosaur, and so looking at that, like me as a Ye fan, as a Cudi fan, like it breaks my heart to see it.
Yeah.
But being from Cleveland, like, what is your perception of that, and then also just of like Cudi and his rise?
I remember driving around Cleveland in college in 2008, I think it was, and I was in my like dad's old Ford Ranger that would sometimes run out of power steering, and hearing Day and Night for the first time, and just being like, "What the hell is this?" Because it sounded like nothing I had ever heard, and was just instantly obsessed with it. And was just like, "Who is this kid? His name's Cudi, okay." And really was interested in what he was going to do. When Man on the Moon came out, I was blasting that for the next year or however long until My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy eventually came out. But I've been a big Cudi fan. If I'm being honest, I feel like some of his nothing has lived up to the hype of Man on the Moon for me as like an album, which has always been a little bit of a like I'm hoping for it each time, that there's just going to be a project start to finish that I love as much as I love that one. But his story in terms of his rise and initial fall, his comeback with Kids See Ghost, and where he's at now, and this a renaissance of popularity for him, and kind of reaching this legendary status, not just in the hip hop space and not just in the music space, but as a pop culture person. I'm very happy for Cudi in that way. But I feel like whenever these beefs with Ye come up, he kind of takes it a little further than Ye does in some ways. Like, I don't necessarily feel like Ye was maybe in the right to call him out the way that he did about like, you're being friends with both, when back in the day, Ye was friends with Big Sean. When Jeen-yuhs left Cudi and started dating Sean, did Ye stop talking to Big Sean in the aftermath of that?
Right.
No, kept making music for him, kept him on the label. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy, I think you could point out in that situation. But then you could also say, like, that's a girlfriend and not
that's his
wife, mother of children. Yeah. Like, there's a whole other level going on at this point. But then it's like Ye says one thing and Cudi just takes it to that degree of like, you're a dinosaur, you suck. Like, and then he just had that other tweet the other day talking about like, me and Ye are on a song with on Pusha T's album, but we're not cool, and I'm never going to be on a song with him again. And just reading back to some of the comments from 2014, 2015 too, I'm always just like, man, he's so like harsh to Ye in these situations where I feel like if Ye is like a little negative in ways, like Cudi takes it up to a 10.
He almost holds him to that standard that Ye holds Jay to.
Yeah, right.
Where it's like, it's like he almost, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's almost like an idolization where, you have this and then something happens and it's like your whole world is crushed. And so you just have to let everybody know. And it's almost like a really, really bad breakup. Yeah. I think that's the best way for me to explain it.
Well, it kind of has that, comparing it to Jay does make me think of Big Brother, right? Where one, it's your big brother, one, it's this mentor that does this thing. You always, I think, in that dynamic, have this sense of, I want to beat my big brother. I want to come out on top. So instead of maybe treating it a little more like neutrally, you tear them down a little bit more because now it's finally your time to take center stage. Whether that's, I don't think that's necessarily conscious, but it's just kind of like a subconscious aspect of that dynamic that you might see play out. So it's, I mean, I think ultimately it's just sad. We want these guys to be in a good place. We know from the times that they had beefed previously that they want to be cool. They want to love each other and be in the good spots. So the fact that they're not, always just a shame.
And it hurts the fans. The fans, we look at it and we're like, no, please say psych. Like, don't do this to us. I can't go through the heartbreak again. Hearing Jay on Jail was like, oh my God, like we're back. And then when Jay, this might be the return of the throne, you're like, oh my God, like this might be the return of the throne. And then Ye and Drake doing a concert together in LA. It's like, wow, everything's coming full circle. Like things are getting better. And then this bombshell drops. But moving on to Cleveland, like, looking at other Cleveland kids, you're a Browns fan, and you guys just made a huge trade and got Deshaun Watson, gave him a ridiculous amount of money. But at the same time, you guys still have Baker Mayfield on the roster. What does that do to you guys as Browns fans?
I mean, I feel like most Browns fans at this point, from just what I've been seeing on Reddit, I feel like each community, like Twitter Browns fans are very different than Reddit Browns fans a lot of the time.
Yeah.
People are mostly ready to move on from Baker, whether you really loved him or whether you were critical of him. There's no denying that the last season was tumultuous at best. And whether it was the coaches that wanted him to play or whether it was him playing through injury or something, there's just a lot of negativity that built up. I'm still somebody that feels like if he had been given another shot, it would have been interesting to see. He's healthy. He has another year in that system. Does he come back and do what he was doing before? But also it's at the point of just not as crazy as Johnny Manziel was, but having some of that energy of just, I don't need the circus all the time. I don't need the drama all the time. So, but we still have this hurdle, as you're saying, having both Watson and Baker on the team, and mandatory practices are going to start soon. And it's just what happens, because if Baker doesn't want to void his contract, he has to show up. But then what's he doing in the QB room when there's already 3 other quarterbacks? It's him. It's in a strange spot.
It's going to be an interesting situation. What happens? So I'm kind of worried about what happens with Baker, because I feel like I'm a little more critical of Baker and Kyler. My dad played at Oklahoma, so when I look at Oklahoma guys, especially these guys that came out from Lincoln Riley, it's a different breed. It's not the Sam Darnolds who were tough and who, granted Darnold played through tons of injuries and all this stuff, but the Adrian Petersons, the Samaje Perines, those guys, like Baker and Kyler, they're little divas. And, and there's no better way to put it, especially Baker. I mean, he's just out there whining every single day. And I watch him on podcasts and I watch him, do his thing. And it's like, dude, just shut up. Like, why are you going out there and just doing, like, you're not making yourself look good for your potential suitors in the future. And so I think that those are some of the things that I look at from the outside looking in. Hold on one second. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Here, take this and go in the other room. Sorry. You got your dog coming in. I got my son coming in trying to pop air bubbles. So hold on a second, buddy. Go in the other room. Go in your room. Yeah, so but you look at it, and I made a tweet the other day. I mean, you've got, I think it was like $280 million guaranteed in contracts in the quarterback room alone.
Yeah.
And so the Browns obviously have to make some decisions there and make some moves. You can't roster Baker. I don't think that's going to be good for the locker room. Mm-hmm. But you got to be kind of excited about Deshaun at the same time. What are your feelings on it?
I'm so, like, when he first was becoming available and all the talks were happening, I was so certain we weren't going to get him. I was just kind of like, I'm glad I don't have to worry about this. I'm not in the moral quandary of Deshaun Watson. Like, the Browns aren't going to do this to me. It's Cleveland. Why would he come here? And then we were in the finale, and then we were out of it, and I was like, okay, that was a close call, and I felt relieved. And then we got him, and now I'm feeling that, like, just mental confusion of not wanting anything to do with him, but also then just looking at it in football terms and being like, this is the most exciting quarterback we've had in 30 years, 40 years.
Yeah.
and wondering how that will go. It's a very, it's been like a dark night of the soul in terms of
Yeah.
exploring the morality of all of that. I definitely find myself back and forth on it, but with all the drama that Baker had in terms of the team and as a teammate, it is a relief to be moving on to someone else that you feel like can quarterback well and might bring a little more, at least team wise, stability, even
Yeah.
if, man, we made fun of the Steelers for so long for Roethlisberger, and now
Yeah.
here we are in an arguably worse scenario.
Yeah.
uh, but
It's a hard separation of church and state because you're,
yeah,
one hand you know the guy can play, and you know that he's, when he's on the field he's a top 5 quarterback. But then there's a morality issue where, and I've seen a lot of Steeler fans making jokes about that, where it's like, hey, you guys said all these things about Ben, and now look at you. Um, so it's, I get it. It's tough. And I look at it as a Raider fan. I personally, I love Derek. And
I wanted to
there's a
trade
lot
for
of
Derek.
a lot. The funny thing is, I go on podcasts with people all across the league, and everybody wants Derek,
Yeah.
except for Raider fans. Like, Raider Nation is sometimes the most toxic fan base towards their own players, because they have this like grass is greener mentality. They see Patrick Mahomes, they're like, well, why can't we have a quarterback that can do that? Well, nobody else has a quarterback that can do that, And
Yeah.
so every time a quarterback comes available, like, oh, we should get him. It's like, dude, we got Derek. Like, we're good. Like, but some Raider fans were wanting Watson, and they're like, well, why wouldn't you want Watson? I'm like, well, because of this. And they're like, well, just separate them. I'm like, it's hard to,
Yeah.
But at the same time, if he was our quarterback and we won games, then you get excited about it. But getting into the season, like, what are your expectations for the Browns now? I mean, you got Amari Cooper, you just signed Denzel Ward to this huge contract, you've got Deshaun Watson. This is a team that, you look at the Steelers with Mitch Trubisky, I don't see them doing much.
No.
The Bengals they're probably gonna make another run. And then you have the Ravens, who I'm sorry, I'm one of those guys who I don't like Lamar. I don't think Lamar is as good as everybody says Lamar is. I think Lamar is electrifying with his feet, but his arm is pretty mid. So where do you see the Browns, finishing this year?
I mean, it's going to be a battle, which is a little bit of a shame, because in the decades leading up to the Browns finally being good. What a sentence. The rest of the conference wasn't like this. Bengals had some years where they were okay, but they were never a Super Bowl threat team the way that they are now.
Right.
And the Ravens were always really good, which is frustrating. And then the Steelers have always been really good and a threat to make the playoffs every single year. But now it's like the Browns are finally ready to fight, and all 3 teams could make a run to the Super Bowl, given, like, if things fall right. As much of a wild card as Jackson is, it's still possible for him to just take over a game and get them to the Super Bowl. So it's kind of a shame to see us finally good, but in such a competitive space where we could have one of the best records in the league and somehow miss even the wild card spot, because the rest of the division is just kind of popping off. So those interdivision games are going to be very thrilling, but very, very legitimately high stake.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still scared. I'm always scared of the Steelers defense, every time. And the Watt brother, that I forget his first name right now,
TJ.
is always just,
TJ's a beast.
I still feel like he's going to sack us 4 times no matter who the quarterback is. So we'll see where things are at, but I do feel like we're in a space finally where we can compete, where we felt that way the last few years, and we still have some holes, right? Especially with linebacker and some of the defensive line, because even though we have Garrett, it's still uncertain. Like, our tackles aren't the best, and we still don't know who's lining up on the other side of Garrett right now. Unless I missed a signing. Yeah. Which Clowney might still come back. It doesn't seem like there's been a ton of suitors, though
Yeah.
he might want that guaranteed money that we're just dishing out to everybody now. um, I'm excited for it though, because it does feel like as much as prospects were high last year, Baker was still a question mark on whether or not he can make simple passes. And as we saw, his inability to make simple passes crippled us in
Yeah.
these big momentum shifting situations where we just needed a first down and we couldn't get it time and time again. So I feel like Watson, even with him not playing at all last year, puts us in a better position for that. And we really can threaten. It's just going to be a question of, we thought with OBJ and Landry that we were going to do great. It's coming back to, it's really going to highlight Stefanski's play calling
Hmm.
and how big of an issue was Baker and the chemistry Baker had versus was Stefanski's play calling much more limited than what we thought it was. Because I know that people were starting to bring it up a lot last year that the dynamics that were there in Stefanski's first year didn't seem to be there in the second year. And was that a personnel issue or was that just a problem with his system? So it'll be interesting to see how much that's either validated or exposed in this season.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that, having some success in the recent years definitely makes things better.
Yeah.
Question I have is, recently Hugh Jackson came out and said that he was paid to tank games.
Yeah.
And he actually took the money. Now, I know Hugh from his days in Oakland, famously getting pedicures before games. His staunch Mike Silver's staunch defense of him in every situation, and him blocking people because of Hugh. But it's wild that I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. I think with all these people coming out, but the fact that he's taking money to tank games, like, it can't sit well with fans.
No, but I mean, I'm pretty torn on it because one, I just don't believe Hugh Jackson to begin with, and maybe he'll surprise me.
Yeah.
But anyone that was like closely following the team and closely following Hugh, and as you said, you had this experience as a Raiders fan. Hugh's not some amazing coach that was held down by the Browns. He lies a lot or fibs a lot, leaks a lot. There's a duplicity that's been there whenever he's the head coach in terms of media and players that is on him and isn't something that is just being fabricated by the media or anything like that. So I find it hard to take that seriously to begin with. But then teams in all sport, like in the NFL, in the NBA, in the MLB, I don't follow hockey close enough, but I'm sure in hockey as well. Tanking is part of the strategy and rebuild strategy that teams have at this point. You saw it with the Astros before they won the World Series. You saw it with the Royals before they won the World Series. They did like 6 years of losing games in order to get high draft picks, set them up, and then come back with a squad of superior players, sign the right amount of veterans at the right time, and they're golden. Same thing with the Cubs. The Cubs did a little bit of a dive. You see it in the NBA. So it's not surprising to me that the Browns would say, hey, we're not looking to play as competitively as possible. Especially in that time, we're trading away the first pick of the draft instead of getting Wentz or Goff because we want picks. We want to accrue assets. So then we're getting multiple first round picks. We're getting like a few more years of losses to build up the rest of the team because the team was in such dire straits that we had a foundation of talent at a number of positions that benefited us when we finally got Baker, rather than the whole Tim Couch scenario where when the Browns came back from their exile or the move to Baltimore, and we got our new team, we drafted Tim Couch, but there was nobody else around him, and he just got sacked so many times that he was a broken player and whatever potential his career had. So we didn't want to do that, right? You don't want to be Matthew Stafford on the Lions. And then you see what happens when Stafford goes to a team that has a little bit more talent. So it was smart to me what they were doing, but I don't know if Hugh is actually getting paid to lose games so much as there was maybe a bonus incentive if we had a top 10 draft pick. And it was just like, hey, you know, you had a top 10 draft pick, here's $50,000. Rather than like lose this game and you get $50,000. So I could see there being roundabout ways where coaches are paid for this kind of thing or incentivized for this kind of thing. But I don't know if I necessarily have a problem with that.
I think the only aspect I have is with having an issue with it would be from the betting standpoint.
Yeah.
If you're getting paid to tank games and somebody's betting on games, and there's obviously the fixes in that makes things a little difficult for me. But I think if you're in a position where you're tanking to make the team better, right? And you know that there's no chance of you making the playoffs, you know, there's no chance of you going into the postseason, having any kind of success, then yeah, I mean, look at the Colts when they had the suck for luck campaign.
Yeah.
It worked out for them. They got luck, and you know, unfortunately, they weren't able to get him a Super Bowl, but they had a perennial playoff team. This was a team that had a ton of success. You have the Jaguars, who, you know, they've been so bad for so long, but they've acquired all of these top picks. And, you know, now adding Doug Peterson as head coach, you know, the door is open for Trevor Lawrence to succeed. So yeah, there's you know, and you look at it with all the teams. I think the only team that isn't ever going to have success until they change ownership is the A's, because they just get rid of all their good players and they don't do anything to fix it. But you know, as a sports fan, you got to be excited. As a football fan, you got to be excited about it. You know, it looks like we're coming up on our time here. My son's getting a little wild over here. So, but Chris, I wanted to thank you for coming on and let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kanye Podcast. And then we have a YouTube channel at Kanye Podcast. And then our podcast, Watching the Throne, a lyrical analysis of Kanye West. And then if you want explanations to movies and their endings and themes, filmcolossus.com.
There you go. Make sure you guys follow Chris. Make sure you check out the podcast. Make sure you subscribe. And when you go on and subscribe, make sure, especially if you're doing it on Apple Podcasts, go leave a 5-star review. Leave a review. That's how people find out if you like him or not. So if you like Chris, leave a review, leave 5 stars. If you don't like Chris, don't say anything. Just don't be that guy. But Chris, I appreciate you coming on, man. We got to do this again sometime.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny.
All right, let me end that.